So please welcome Nancy Dahn and Timothy Steeves. Well, today I'll be speaking with two musicians who've spent a significant portion of the last 14 years touring Canada. But today's their first time together here at the Festival of the Sound. Now, violinist Nancy Dahn and Timothy Steeves, pianist, together, professionally, they form duo Concertante, as we've just heard in a fine concert this afternoon. Personally, they form a musical couple, and we'll be talking about that in one of a series of interviews with musical couples. It's actually the second here at the festival this year. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tell me, this is your first time at the festival, but not your first time in Paris Sound or the Stocky Centre. I gather you've been here before.
That's right. It was this fall, actually. We did a Contact event, Contact Ontario, and we came, and it was a short performance, but we came and we played at the centre. I think it was October of this past fall.
Did you like the hall?
Oh, it's a fantastic hall. Yeah. That's when it's kind of a big deal for performers. They're not actually pleasant things, because you don't actually play for an audience, but it's an audience all of presenters and managers and this type of thing, and it's pretty high energy, and everybody then plays, and then you're kind of jostling with them because you want the gigs, you want the big contacts. So you have to, usually it demands a very specific type of program and this sort of thing, and they're exhausting. And then after you play, you have to mingle with hundreds of people and be friendly and nice and smile. And
but this is how the appointment book gets filled.
yeah.
Now, I'm sure everybody's wanting to know and been asking me to ask, which came first, the professional relationship or the personal relationship?
The musical relationship actually came first. So I was at Memorial already, teaching there, Memorial University in St. John's, and Tim came for an interview and won the piano position that had opened up there. And I remember phoning him, he was in Germany at the time, over the summer, and asking, would you like to play Beethoven Kreutzer Sonata next year on a recital? So that's a major undertaking, and he was very keen to do that. And so we started rehearsing way in advance for that, and there was just a very special connection right away. So that was, really thrilling. I mean, the musical connection, and then from that developed a very significant relationship, which has resulted in 2 children. And
one of them's a page turner.
Ah, we saw the page turner. Let's talk about that in a moment, about the family life. But is either of you Newfoundland born?
No.
No.
I'm from Nova Scotia, and Tim is from Saskatoon.
Saskatchewan. Not that there's other Saskatoons, but...
Okay, what did you, Nancy, did you come from a musical family originally?
Not really. I have 3 older brothers who are all scientists, and my dad is an engineer, and my mom is an amateur cellist, but was a stay-at-home mom. So she was, the big fan of classical music, and we had CBC radio going all the time in our house. And I think when I was 2, she was given a violin by a friend who was going to just throw it in the garbage, and she said, no, I'll take that for my daughter. But I think I chose the violin myself at some point along the line.
That's nice. And Timothy, your family?
It's exactly the same. My mother was sort of an amateur musician. Both of my parents are biologists. My sister's an animal pathologist, and my brother's a neurologist. It's exactly the same.
Oh, my.
So just like Nancy, they were all science background. And then yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, but they were very encouraging. It's just that we decided not to go into science.
You do travel a lot. Early on, was that possible with your family? And now it's obviously possible with your family because they're here today. But,
yes.
What's your experience been like, sort of trying to do all this traveling and yet bringing a family up at the same time?
Well, it's certainly not easy, exactly. You know, when Clara was first a baby, we just took her everywhere with our sitter. So we always traveled, and then we did that for 2.5 years, and then Sasha came along, and so we continued to do that for another 2.5 years. So basically the first 5 years, we just took them everywhere with us and with another person to babysit the whole time. And then after that point, we started making other arrangements, so they'd either stay with my parents or with Tim's parents or with this sitter who's still with us now. After 12 years, the same person. So usually now we don't bring them along, and because of school and things like that. They stay at home and our sitter moves in, and that's how we do it.
Do they sit at home and practice?
Well, that's what they say. They do.
They're budding musicians too?
Yes, they are, but other things too.
Is it going to be a piano quartet, or what are you
a
working on?
It could be a piano quartet if I play viola. Clara plays violin and piano, and Sasha plays cello and piano. So we have a bunch of options.
When you were putting together or thinking of sort of making a full-time project out of the duo Concertante as a team, did you have a vision of what it might turn into, or is it more a matter of building as you went?
I think it's building. We really like playing the standard, you know, the standard repertoire, the old favorites, Beethoven and Brahms and Mozart and Bach. But nowadays you have to be realistic, and there's a demand to play other things. I mean, a classical musician needs to branch out and play a lot of popular music and delve a bit into the world of jazz, and you need to commission. You need to have a lot of new repertoire. You get a lot of support if you commission new works. And I remember when we started, I wasn't particularly good at well, Nancy says I wasn't particularly good at counting. So, so new music was a bit of a problem for me. It still is a problem for me, but I'm much better. And I can almost count to 5. But yeah, we've commissioned about 15 or 16 new works. So what happened is we decided to form. We put the duo together, and then we've been taken in all these different directions that we had not really intended. But it's really these different directions that keep us going. And then you know, we once in a while, well, more than once in a while, we'll do the repertoire that we love.
It's a bit like a garden in a way, isn't it? You know, you've got your basic plants there with your Bach, your Beethoven, and your sonatas, and that sort of thing. A bit of colour with the Kreisler and the Sibelius, and pieces like that. And then you have to sort of prune and plant and tend the garden with all the new works. And what directions are these new works taking you in?
Well, actually, I was...
Some imaginative ones.
You know, when we started, I was overwhelmed by the talent in Canada, the young composers, and some of the works that have been written for us are just stunning. I mean, it was a real eye-opener, a real surprise. And they reflect a lot of what, you know, Canada is today, which is a really multicultural society. So we have Chinese Canadians that have written for us, Canadians that come from Eastern Europe that have written for us, and so it's really difficult to say Canadian, you know, new music is this, because there's just so many different influences and flavors. It's incredible, really.
And Nancy, you're also working with country fiddle. You have a program that does that?
We have a really fun show that we do with Gordon Stobie and Greg Sim, a fiddle player and a guitarist who are based in Nova Scotia. And we put together this show that sort of explores the stereotypes about our genres, you know, the sort of uptight, stuffy classical musicians versus the folk guys, you know, who don't even wear socks to the concerts or whatever, and then how those two worlds can come together and we can find common ground. And I mean, working with these guys is really fun because they're incredibly funny and brilliant, and they're also really used to communicating verbally to the audience in a way that we really learn from. So they have just millions of jokes, and they play off the audience in a way. And so going on tour with them is always it's a great time as well as a good learning experience in terms of, I mean, I think all classical musicians should have to kind of do that.
I mean, one of our,
this is one thing lacking, I think, in our field for a lot of us, is that we just practice, and then we don't actually practice the talking part enough.
Yeah, our last tour was through rural Manitoba, and a lot of the places that we played didn't have a piano, so I had a keyboard in the back, and there's a great picture of us. Which town was that?
That was at Carberry.
Yeah, playing in the Legion in Carberry. And I think every classical musician should do that. It was an incredible experience. It was unreal, the people that came up to you afterwards. And we just played our repertoire. We played our Bach and our Beethoven. And all of these, people that in the audience, I'm sure they'd heard classical music, but probably never live before like that. It was incredibly well received, and it was just, for us, it was eye-opening, and I would never have done that 15 years ago. But this is just one of the ways you're sort of pulled, and through the career and everything, and you just learn so much from it.
Not something you were taught in school.
No, not at all.
No, that's wonderful, because it sort of renews the reasons you get into it in the first place.
Exactly.
And tomorrow you're working with somebody else.
Yes, we have the great pleasure of working with Evelyn Hart, and I mean, just yes,
yep.
Here this is at 12 o'clock tomorrow. We're doing a piece written for us by Chan Kanin, and it's music set to the poetry of Carol Angel, who's also a friend, and it ends up being a pretty theatrical piece, and all of these poems are very lyrical and highly descriptive, and some of them very, very funny too. And Evelyn just brings so much life and imagination and nuance and energy to everything she does. So, working with her has also been hugely inspiring. Mm-hmm. So I really urge you to come see Evelyn. She's really something else.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. A good bit of your other work, too, is teaching. And you mentioned Memorial University, of course, in St. John's, Newfoundland. How important, how central is teaching to what you do?
It's pretty important. I mean, everything is kind of all mixed together. I mean, the family, the music, the playing, the teaching. It's hard to prioritize, but they all inform and inspire and feed off each other for sure. The teaching, we get a lot out of our students for sure, in terms of feeling inspired and wanting to set a really good example and be good mentors and all of that. So yeah, it's a really important part of what we do.
Is it individual instruments you teach, or is it chamber groups, or?
We do have at MUN we teach one-on-one individually, but we do run a chamber music festival. It starts in 2 weeks, and there we do a lot of chamber music coaching.
Now, I was going to get to that. That's Tuckamore.
Tuckamore Festival.
Yeah, that sounds a very Newfoundland sort of a word.
Well, yeah, the Tuckamore is just an evergreen tree that's had the crap beaten out of it by the wind. Yeah. And they don't grow vertically, they grow horizontally, really, because they just get blown. And that's what they call a tuckamore. I don't know where the word comes from, but...
when we first started the festival, we had lots of posters that had images of this tree, and a funny story is that in the very first noon hour concert, there were two ladies. They're very confused because they were looking for a horticultural society.
So what
what
kind of things do you grow at the festival? I mean, is it a teaching festival, or is it a performance festival as well?
There's a huge teaching component. They audition. We take about 20 students, and these students come from all over, mostly North America, but we've had them from places like Israel and Europe, and we put them into chamber groups, trios, quartets, quintets, and we give them their music about 6 weeks before, and they show up for Tuckamore, and they rehearse, and they perform, and it's actually the students that close down the festival. They're the festival finale. And then we have Jim's been out there as well, and we have great guest artists. But getting back to one of the things that Nancy said, I think what we feel, because we're involved with, both worlds, both the performing at Tuckamore and then at the teaching, but I think, what inspires us, sometimes even more so than the performing, is working with these students. It can be really, really thrilling and exciting.